Well, thank you, Tanaka-san, and thank you for listening to our history. So, after history, I think we're going to talk about what we're doing and what we're going to do with Unicast. And this should be quite interesting, as today we brought two projects. One's Unicast, and we think Unicast actually encapsulates the value of time with an NFT. Now, we're all in the Web3, right? So, with an NFT, we encapsulate time, and I'll explain in due process how that happened. And we actually have another project called Angle. That's a Japanese vacation rental DAO project, and we try to encapsulate space. You know, we have the physical world with time and space, and we have two projects that captures time value and space value. So these two projects, I think, will explain in more details, and thank you for your patience. Let's go. A little bit about myself. I'm the co-founder of Unicast and also a co-founder of Angle. And we started Unicast in 2019, actually. And we are well kind of connected with the Japanese blockchain scene, and also published two books on crypto and use of blockchain in industries. And working with a lot of Japanese associations, especially with satellite and blockchain, and then also with industry and blockchains. So the company actually was established in 2001. It's relatively young, but we actually got a lot of recognition already from the Japanese media coverage, and also a lot of the Japanese distilleries are now working with us to enter into Web3. So why are we talking even about whiskey with Web3? Well, the thing is, we realize as COVID progresses globally that average time spent on digital devices is steadily on the rise. And in the US, of course, over 50% of the time, people are in the digital world already. So that means what we own and what we have in the digital world will be more important than what we have and what we own in the physical world. And the same is with spirits like whiskey. So what does that mean is that before we have whiskey collectors who collect whiskeys and to show off to their friends in the physical world, and they can taste it. I mean, that's all good. But now you're not seeing your friends in the physical world anymore. You're talking with them over Zoom. You're congregating over in the metaverse. So how do you show off your possessions, your physical possessions? Well, one solution we have is to actually linking your physical possessions to the digital world. And why do we have to do that? Because I know many of you probably have seen this, the Maslow's law of desires, right? The first base layer of physiology, like desires, whether you need to eat, you need to drink, you stay in some places. Well, those have to be fulfilled in the physical world, of course, because we live in the physical world as animals. And then, of course, there are safety needs. That's also needed. However, what we believe, let's see, the pointers, great, useful. The love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization, those human desires can be satisfied in the digital world. And that's what we're aiming for with NFTs, is to satisfy those desires to create values that people or our society can understand. And whiskey in particular is interesting in the sense that it does have a utility and physical aspect to it. I mean, people drink it to get drunk. I mean, that is sort of the physical utility from whiskey, right? But a lot of people buy whiskeys not because just trying to get drunk, especially the expensive ones. You don't try to get drunk with Macallan like 1991, right? You mostly for esteem purposes. Like, you own it so people know you own it. And that's good enough for a lot of people. Some people don't even drink whiskey, and then they have their whiskey collections instead of their like shiny shelves, and they show off to their friends when they visit. Well, the problem is people don't visit anymore. So what are you going to do with those whiskey, right? That is the issue. So we are trying to redefine the definition of whiskey and redefine that in the digital world. Like, what is equivalent of whiskey and spirits like they do in the physical world, but redefined in the digital world, because that's the world we're going to live in. So that's why we're focusing this area. And why did we look at whiskey? I mean, particularly, I mean, there are all sorts of Japanese alcohol. I mean, we're in Japan, so we'll look at Japanese. There is sake, right? And some Japanese wines are so famous already. But the difference is sake, we don't keep it for a very long time. I mean, it's freshly made, and it's better to taste sake in a fresh manner, right? But whiskey is very peculiar. It's when the time goes by, when the whiskey stays in the cask longer, the value of it goes up. And if you can think about moments, right? Not many things will have its value go up as time goes by. Like, what can you think? Well, a lot of you can say, well, antique maybe, but not every old items can act as antique. Even gold doesn't go up in price. It follows inflation, but it doesn't go up in price. It doesn't change quality. I mean, that's a good thing about gold. It doesn't change. So whiskey actually tastes better while it stays in the cage. Oh, in the cask, not the cage. In the cask. So we figured that if we have tokenized something, that something better increase in value. And by you just holding the NFT, increases in value. Isn't that amazingly wonderful? Because you don't have to wait for the market fluctuations like a bull market or bear markets. You know, worst come worst, you can drink it a wonderfully aged whiskey. I mean, that's kind of the good value that you have. So why didn't we buy whiskeys in the casks then? You know, that is the question, right? You know, people usually, I know many of you probably drink and buy whiskeys, you buy them in bottles, not in casks. Why? Because bottles have better liquidity. You can give to people your bottles, you can keep it at home, and you can sell it on second-hand trading platforms, or you can do a lot of things with bottles. But whiskey casks used to be very difficult to handle. You have to keep it inside a distillery, right? You cannot take it out. Well, and the thing is, if you want to sell it, where are you going to sell it? I mean, there is no open marketplace for whiskey casks. So it's difficult for the average person to buy whiskey casks and to show off to their friends. That's been very difficult. But now it's possible because we actually work with distilleries. And instead of selling individuals one single big cask which costs tens of thousands of dollars, we divide it into 1/100th or 100th of a fraction, right? So people can buy 1/100th of a whiskey cask. So that means before maybe you have to spend tens of thousands of dollars, now you can spend a couple $100 to buy your whiskey, but that whiskey is stored in the cask so it can age and can increase in value. And then, if you don't like it, or if you don't want to hold that whiskey anymore, you can always sell your NFT in any open marketplace, because NFT is a standard. You can sell it anywhere you like, so that it provides liquidity for a market that has no liquidity before. You know, that's the wonder of it. Before, holding a cask would be a headache. Now you're holding a cask NFT will be easy and smooth, and then you can show off of that your metaverse to your friends. Be like, I have a 3D cask and with NFT proof to it, so that people know, oh, you own it. So you can show off. But if you have it at home and your shelf, nobody knows you have it. So that's another value. So this is what we do. And a lot of you probably know about NFT, so I don't have to explain it. But why we're using NFT? Because digitally we can prove that you have ownership and it cannot be faked. So as long as we recognize the smart contract and the NFT as the only ownership right to the cask, then you're safe. Basically, that NFT can be transferred, sold, exchanged digitally, or even collateralized. Well, that we don't explain. So overall, this is the model that we're using. I think we explained that a lot during the booth, the showcase booth that we had. So normally we work with the distillery directly, and then we mint the cask NFTs. and then we sell to users, holders. Usually when we sell it, it's not slowly selling. We usually do a batch, which is one cask, about 100 NFTs, about exactly 100 NFTs. And then we'll sell it usually like in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 hour, and then that's gone. And then a lot of people come back and be like, wow, we weren't able to buy it. But that's the primary sale. But of course, we also encourage people to buy it on OpenSeas from the current owners, because that can generate more secondary trading. And that's what we're trying to get for, is without secondary trading, there's no liquidity. We don't want to be a business of just from us and selling to users, because that's what e-commerce does. That's not what Web3 does. Web3 is encouraging user-to-user interactions to use marketplace, open marketplace, so that there is enough liquidity. Then people can always let go of their NFTs if they don't need it anymore. Then they feel safe holding that NFT, instead of holding a cask where you don't really know when you can release it or when you can sell it, how you change it into money, right? So that's what we do. And aside from, of course, the liquidity and the exchange value of Unicask cask NFTs, we tend to think of the time as something that we need to record, because that's valuable. So we record it with an NFT's timestamp. So you know exactly when the NFT is created and how long it's been, just by looking at the NFT. So you know that it's been accruing values, and that's not faked, basically, right? So that part you can definitely check in on-chain. And then also, I don't know, many of you are familiar with antiques, especially in Japan. Japanese antiques are like packaged very nicely, and it's even been so like from the old times. So they have like wooden boxes, right? And it's been customary for the owners to write their names, or the famous people, influencers, to write their name on the box to certify. Say like, oh, I know this is antique, this is a nice thing, I own it, it's very nice. So an antique with the certification signatures, the Chinese character signatures, and then for famous people, actually worth a lot more than just antique without any box, any traceability. So this acts as a traceability. So we want actually blockchain to act as a tool for traceability for casks. So we know how many hands exchanged, how it's been transferred, so that people can evaluate those casks better. So, and aside from, of course, the exchange value and all that, we're also looking at building the community, because in the end, what we think valuable is the community, not the cask. Because you need people to show it off to be able to have value. That is the key. So building a community, it's more easily said than done. But what do we do with it? Well, of course, fractionalizing it does help. Like fractionalizing a cask, then it's easier for people to buy. Instead of one cask in one NFT, one person can buy it. Right now we have one cask, 100 people, so you have 100 people community around the cask, definitely. But also we do gamifications with our community, with our cask card. So every NFT actually comes with a card, and then you can play a game with it. And then what do you do when you win the game? Well, when you win the game, we give you a sample from that particular cask, so that people find it interesting. The other people cannot drink because the whiskey is stored inside the distillery. But the people who win the game can actually get the sample and get a taste of the whiskey, which is, makes the person who wins the game feel a lot better, and it's interesting. And unlike a lot of the content-based whiskeys, our value is not based entirely on the market fluctuations in supply and demand. So we'd like to think that our base value is the market value of a whiskey. But beyond that, we have liquidity premium. That's when an asset can be easily bought and sold. It gains liquidity premium. And we have a collection that you can show off to people digitally, because that's where we interact, digital space. And your self-satisfaction, that's when you hold whiskey casks, then you're like, wow, I love myself for loving whiskey. And also the fun of playing games. So all that captured inside the whiskey NFTs. And I also have to mention that whiskey price is rising very fast, especially lately with Ukrainian war. The grain prices are going up, and that leads directly to the price increase in whiskey. So people can expect whiskey price to go up very quickly over the next couple years, I think, at least in the short term. And we actually also work not only with whiskey, we also work with artists in the NFT content space. So some of the works that we've done, we collaborated with artists in Japan to create collaboration casks. So we don't want like every cask looks similar. I mean, it's kind of boring. We've sold 6 casks already, and if every one of them is just a serial number, well, that's kind of boring and not exactly leveraging the digital space. So we collaborate with artists, and they create their art. Those are the cards. Actually, each NFT is one card. So those are the cards that you can play a game with. So it's randomly distributed. So when you buy NFT, all of them, if they're from the same cask, have the same right to redeem to the whiskey. But you know, they are all a little different because they're also NFTs, and they also have different artworks on it. So we hope maybe eventually, you know, there's some artists will be famous, and that'll be a differentiating factor. It's not just the whiskey, but differentiating factor for the price of the whiskey NFTs to go up. Okay, so up to now, we call it NFT 1.0. That's what we do, Unicast 1.0. But you know, there is a big catch. You know, we've always thought, you know, people would love it and people will trade. And it is true, people love it and people buy it, but then people didn't start trading. You know, that's the interesting thing. It's like, when you love it so much, like, you don't sell it. And you can keep it for 10 years. So for our whiskeys, usually we store it for 10 years, or 20 years, or 30 years, actually. So minimum we can store it for 10 years, right? So during the 10 years, people tend to just forget about it. And then what are we gonna do? So we are stepping up, and then we're going to the second step. We've started a whiskey DAO. So we want to show that our whiskey NFT value is not entirely just the price and value of the whiskey. Then how do we do that? Well, we find whiskey DAO is the answer. That's the one that we're doing right now. Whiskey 1.0 we started last year, and it was pretty successful, and the 2.0 is here. And well, I guess I don't have to explain too much about DAO, and there's all sorts of sessions today and yesterday you guys all heard about. But you know, what we base the DAO on, I think, is very important. So we actually don't raise money with the DAO. That's the interesting part. We actually have our NFT holders automatically become our DAO members. And what we gain from that is we gain a community of whiskey lovers and Web3 whiskey lovers. And these whiskey lovers, a couple hundreds of them right now, are working together with our team to create a new whiskey brand that's owned by the DAO. It's not owned by us, it's owned by the DAO. And what's a good thing it does is that community will select the labels, the bottle shape, the contents of the whiskey bottle. So we create, in reality, this is about the real world, not digital world, right? We create a real brand with a real product in the physical world, and we're gonna sell it to department stores, liquor stores, hotels. And of course we're gonna make profit. What we're gonna do is a profit. The profit is the DAO's profit. And we're gonna distribute the profit in the form of free whiskey bottles, in the form of discount tickets, in the form of tokens, back to the NFT holders, DAO owners. So that's what we do. So people have been excited about this idea because that will be, well, that is the first whiskey DAO globally that actually creates a new brand. And by the way, just to release some interesting information, is that we were able to register NFT as a brand in Japan for alcohol. So we're gonna use NFT as a brand, so that whiskey will be branded as NFT whiskey. Yeah, so that'll be sold globally. So soon you'll find that whiskey in your country, hopefully. We're trying to get into Japan. Well, Japanese market is nailed already, so we're looking to coming to Singapore. Hopefully we can sell in Singapore with a Japanese whiskey or Japanese brand whiskey called NFT, and they will be on the shelf and for you to purchase. But for people who want to join our whiskey DAO, then they have to purchase an NFT. And then we release the NFT once a month or 2 months. If you guys are interested, please follow our Discord and our Twitter. I think you can find out more information about us. And we also want to expand globally. So if you're like interested in become part of us or become our ambassador for your country, please talk to us after this session. You know, we'll definitely want to get the discussion going. Yeah. So that's all for our whiskey, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about our coming project in tokenizing space in the real estate, and then we can probably go into some Q&A, and then we can probably mingle. Yeah. So what this angle does? So this is. This is in Japanese. Sorry. So it says we'll realize everything in this. So you can display your NFTs in the digital house that you buy from us. And then you're able to stay in the real house for a period of time if you're an NFT holder. And we partner with Polygon as well. So we basically combine the Web3 metaverse with a physical house. And that physical house is, of course, operated as a vacation rental DAO. So operated as a vacation rental. And people who own the NFT are in the DAO that manage that house, so that the NFT holders first will get the right to use the digital house to post their digital art, and that digital art will be displayed in the screens in the real house. So people who come host events in the real house will see the NFTs, and maybe they will buy it, right? So they can have a channel to sell your NFTs. And also they get the right to stay in the real house. And plus, the real house is rented out, so it has cash flow. So that cash flow goes back to the DAO. And the DAO members, which is NFT holders, gets to vote on how that money is being spent. You know, it can be used for maintenance, for upgrading of the house, or for increasing the number of days you can stay in the house, or even to buy a new one. So we're creating a DAO that utilizes vacation rental as a cash flow business, but it's not owned by our business, it's owned by the DAO. But what does our business do is we manage it for the DAO, because the DAO obviously is not a legal entity in many countries. They cannot own properties, it cannot have business licenses. So we set up a company that does that for the DAO on the behalf of the DAO. But the money and the returns are all going back to the DAO and going back to the NFT holders. So that's the scheme that we're doing. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so if you're interested, please also join our Discord and Twitter account for NFT. So, well, when we talk about assets, right, the real asset NFTs, you know, what in essence that we're doing? Because, you know, like to generate just liquidity, current financing does it already. I mean, for the real estate, REITs does it. And we have a whiskey fund that buys whiskey casks, and you can just have a small share of it. But the thing is, with real assets NFTs, we're not just looking at the liquidity value of the NFTs. We also have the fulfillment of desires value, that one that we talked initially, right? And usually, you know, people don't feel like their desires fulfilled by holding a REIT. Like, they cannot imagine a house in Bahamas, right? Even if they hold a REIT. There's no like sentimental value to it. But we do believe sentimental values are important, because we're human, we're not always logical sometimes. And then we love things that have sentimental values, like a villa house, like whiskey, and that's what we're tokenizing. And that's what human desires need to be fulfilled for. And I think As long as human desire is fulfilled, then we call it value. And if it's not, then we cannot call it value. So that's what we think about that. And here is our QR code. Please follow if you're interested.